Hello, this is Alex Isa, and today I'm going to be talking about why you should use auditory learning in your lessons. So, first off, I want to start off by talking about what exactly is auditory learning. And our first step of that is to debunk common beliefs or myths about it. First off, I just want to say you should try to use a variety of learning styles, whether it's kinesthetic, visual, auditory, etc. And that's because of this research done by Helding, where each domain of learning should only serve as a useful tool to guide your activity, but it shouldn't be the end all be all. And so that just means you can get creative with it. Don't be afraid to play around with them and mix and match. And so from there, I kind of want to talk about how exactly does auditory learning work. And that's through a process called auditory processing. And that's essentially just the ability to make meaning from sound, which is from Krauss and Weizsäck's research. And I'll have all of this linked in the bio as well as the end of the PowerPoint. So feel free to check those out. And essentially, in simple terms, it's just our brain translating everything we hear for our own personal understanding. And so I just wanted to bring up some outside research that I think relates to this. And this was done by Brown and Palmer. And essentially, their study was to find out how combining an action with an auditory factor has an effect on memory and information retention. And so, with this one specifically, they worked with piano players. And in the study, they had three different groups. The first one listened to the music only, the second one only used sheet music, and then the third group used both the sheet music and listened to the song. And so the result of this was group 3 had shown the best results of memory retention compared to group 1 and 2. And so you may be wondering, how does that relate to math? What's the point here? And the only reason I bring this up is because the same ideas can be applied to early math learning. And so that idea of having that physical motor factor with the sheet music combined with the audio factor, which was the song, can be translated into the math world. And by doing so, we can help our early learners kind of learn effective methods for them to learn from and also eventually utilize those as they grow up and build new skills. And you can kind of see this scaffolding of skills in the Colorado academic standards. You can see in kindergarten, standard 2.1, students are expected to be able to represent addition as well as subtraction with objects, fingers, mental images, drawings, as well as sounds, which I'll be kind of highlighting today, as well as acting it out, verbal explanations, expressions, and equations, and so on. And you can kind of see this build up through the grades up until second grade, where they're expected to know these addition sums by the end of the year. And you can build up to that using some of these ideas as well as others that I'll go over today as a foundation, just to get them going and feel confident as they move on. And so here are some ideas to try out with your learner. So first off, as you saw that I mentioned in the standards, it's clapping it out while you call it out. So as you're going through addition flashcards, my first tip would just to be say it out loud multiple times before you move on to a new card. As silly as it may seem, having to repeat 2 plus 3 equals 5 over and over again, it really helps solidify it in their mind, and especially when they repeat it with you. And again, it just helps that retention for those quick addition facts. And also, along with that, you can clap out the numbers. So, for example, the number 2 would translate into claps. And so here's that problem: 2 plus 3 equals 5. So you could clap it out. So 2 claps plus 3 claps equals 5 claps. And to kind of spice it up, you can add another factor by possibly trying to add in a beat. And with this one, it's just to have them physically be involved with the learning and just repetition. And then the second one is a ball toss game. So if you're working with like a group or in a classroom, this would be ideal. So you could have the children stand in a circle, and then you'll read out the addition problem aloud, but also have the class repeat it with you. And you could do it probably once or twice. And then you can toss it to a student so that way they can answer back with the sum, with a phone a friend backup, of course, because the main idea is just to get them thinking, not making them feel like they're on the spot and they have to get it right. Um, and once they provide an answer, ask them to show their thinking. So they could say counting fingers, or they could do like imaginary tally marks on their hand. And again, just repeat this with new problems. And the main idea is just to get them talking about it verbally and aloud, just so that way they can combine that physical action with an oral aspect to it. And then one more tip that I'm going to bring up today is pulling it apart and talking it out. And so with this one, try to have as many discussions as you can about the problem with your learner while you're working on it. And essentially just take it step by step and identify the components in the problem. So for example, you can be like, okay, well, my first number is 2, and my action is adding them. And then my second number is 3. And just eventually talk about how they can find the sum, just so you can teach them tools, and again, talking about it orally, they can kind of think back to that moment being like, oh yeah, I talked about this with mom or dad or teacher. And then in the end, it's really just to dissect the problem and get a better understanding of their thinking rather than them just spitting out the correct answers right off the bat. And then here are my references for today. Again, thank you for listening, and I will have these listed in the bio so that way you can check them out. I hope you guys have a good day, and check out our other videos as well. Thank you.